If you can, please put on your camera so we can see you. And I would say introduce yourself in the chat while the IPD team introduces themselves. And I'll just call on people so it's not super awkward. I'm just going to go in order of my screen. So Mark, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hi, my name is Mark Yim. I'm the faculty director of the IPD program. Mostly I represent the engineering side of things.
Thanks, Mark. And Mary Eileen?
Hi, I'm Mary Eileen Griffith. I'm the admin for the program.
Mike?
Hi, Mike Avery. I teach the core first year studio courses and other courses, and I'm more on the design side and architecture.
Thank you. Roland and Kevin?
Hi, my name is Roland. I'm a first year IPD student. I have a background in entrepreneurship and design. So yeah.
Name is Kevin. I am from Indonesia, first year IPD students with Roland too. My background was in after nonprofit and design, brand consulting agency / design a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Ishan, why don't you go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Ishan. I'm a first year IPD student and I come from China. My background is in industrial design.
And Chris and Varden?
I'm Chris. I'm also a first year IPD student and my background is in industrial design as well.
And I'm Varden. I come from a venture capital and product management background, but did my undergrad in informatics. So I come straight from an undergrad. I'm from Norway.
Thank you. And Cam, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Cameron. I, like Fardnan, just came straight from undergrad. My background is in computer science and assistive technology.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, as I mentioned, folks who are joining us, if you can, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat so we know who you are. Tell us your name, where you're joining from, and maybe a little bit about your background. And feel free to turn your screen on. And also I would say, so how this is going to go is I'm going to spend a little bit of time, we're all going to spend a little bit of time introducing you to the program, telling you a little bit about the structure. And then we're hoping to spend about half of our time together with questions and answers. But I will say, even when I'm presenting, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or, throw a question in the chat and I may or may not see it while I'm talking. But the goal here is really for you to learn about the program and get a sense of who we are and what it's like in IPD. And so feel free to ask whatever questions you have. And I see some information coming in the chat, which I really appreciate. So I'll just get started. I already talked about our goals for today. IPD, as I think you probably all know, is a 2-year master's program that's situated in the School of Engineering at Penn. And we really are about bringing design, engineering, and business together. So the program lives in engineering. My appointment is in design, and we are currently in a Wharton building. And so that's just some of the ways that we're bringing together the 3 disciplines. But the goal is really to bring the disciplines together for the purpose of creating new products and services. The program is about almost 15 years old. We're about to have a big birthday. And when we started, we were really rooted in physical product design, but I would say now we're really focused on a design process that can lead into physical product design or could lead into digital product design. And students can kind of choose which they want to focus on based on the classes that they take. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I always like to contrast a really nice looking clean line Venn diagram with this, which is sort of the messy reality of what interdisciplinary work really looks like. There's a lot of lines, there's a lot of, different people from different backgrounds using the same word, maybe to mean something different. There's a lot of conversation that needs to happen, a lot of collaboration that happens because no one person can be an expert in all of the things you need to know to really bring a successful product to life. And so a lot of it is about making connections between the disciplines, learning how to work with people from different disciplines. And I think two things that come from that for IPD students is one is they really learn to become translators, which enables them to take a leadership role in an organization, translating between people with different disciplinary backgrounds. And then the second thing is they learn how to learn things that they don't know. And I think that is incredibly valuable as you graduate, move through the world, and things are constantly changing, and that becomes less daunting because you can learn things that you don't know anything about. I like to think that IPD is a program, but we have a point of view about what good work looks like and how it should feel that we really try to infuse the program with, and that is embedded in our values. And so we're really focused on collaboration, creating with a purpose, not just making things for the sake of making something, but making something that matters to people, embracing experimentation in how we work and how we implement our work, not shying away from hard things. One of the benefits of bringing multiple mindsets, people with different backgrounds together, is that together we can tackle things that are harder than we might be able to do alone. We also really believe in designing for equity and really being thoughtful about how our design processes further the cause of equity or sometimes inadvertently create inequalities, and how we can work against that. And then, we're always juggling multiple balls with different stakeholder perspectives, different disciplinary perspectives. And the goal is really to resolve the tension between different perspectives in an elegant way, which sounds lovely and is actually really hard to do in practice. But you see these values coming through in the way we work together and the things we work on, the projects we do, and students have a lot of opportunity to embody these values. And we hope that when they graduate, they're going to be bringing those values forward with them into the world. So a little bit about what IPD looks like. This is a rendering. It's not a real picture, but it's better than any picture I've been able to take. This is where we live. We are at the corner of 40th and Sansom Street in Philadelphia, just off campus in a building called Tangen Hall. The building is a few years old, and it's been great. We've had this opportunity to design a space that's designed just for us. And it was really clean about 2 years ago, and now 2 years in, we've gotten our mess everywhere, which I think makes it even better at this point. But if you're in the program, this is what the studio looks like without all the student stuff in it. But it's a nice open space. We have these great windows. We have great workspaces, students have spaces to store their work, opportunity to work together and collaborate. We also have access to really nice fabrication facilities, both in the building and outside of the building, where students can, if they're working on physical products, can make and build and learn how to make and build, even if they've never done it before. Sometimes a day in IPD is just a day in a classroom where you're presenting your work to other students, or sitting and listening to a lecture, and there is reading that happens and things like that. We invite guest lecturers to come in and share their wisdom and expertise with us. So some of the learning happens in the classroom, some of the learning happens outside of classroom experiences. And then a lot of learning happens in conversation, as you can see Mike there talking to Zining, conversations about the work. That could be a part of a studio class, or it could be just a conversation that happens outside of a class when somebody's working on something and somebody else walks by and starts asking questions. And then this is one of my favorite pictures of what IPD looks like, not staged, but there's a lot of learning from each other. So IPD students tend to take a lot of the same classes and, get together and work on their homework together, or you're doing work in the studio and you have a question and you just turn and you ask it to someone who happens to be there, who has a different background, a different experience, and a different perspective. So the learning happens in a lot of different locations, through a lot of different kinds of activities, and from a lot of different people, including your fellow classmates in the program. And I think that's really one of the strengths of the program. some technical aspects about the program. There are two variants of the IPD degree. There's the MIPD for students from design, engineering, or business backgrounds, which really is about more of an interdisciplinary perspective on product design. And students take a wider variety of courses across design and engineering and business. And then for students who have an undergraduate degree in engineering who want to do product design but want to go deeper into engineering, there's the MSc degree, MSc IPD, and those students take the majority of their courses in the School of Engineering. In practice, I think it's really important to know, you might be friends with somebody and in classes with someone and never know which variant of the degree. We sort of run the program as one cohort, and all the studio classes happen in collaboration, but the curriculums for the programs are a little bit different. And so the experience, like what you learn, is a little bit different. Sorry, I thought there was a different slide there. For all students, because we have this focus on design, engineering, and business, then most people come in really knowing only one of those disciplines, sometimes two. But we have these foundation classes, and those are classes where students without a background in design, engineering, or business can kind of get a little bit up to speed on each of those, like enough to be dangerous and enough to take classes with other people in those disciplines. So this is a picture from a few years ago from the engineering foundation class where, 10 students with no background in engineering came in and in 4 weeks learned engineering foundations and were able to build robots that sense and reacted and walked. And I don't know, what would you say, Mark? Like 8 out of 10 of them actually were able to stand up and walk and sense at the end of the class.
Yeah, and a lot of them would do more than that. So the big part of that was being creative. Not only get a little robot to walk, but you can see they're putting some design flair in there as well. We would call this all of engineering in 4 weeks. So you might have like 1 day of what would normally be a semester in another normal degree.
Yeah, and Mark used to teach that class, but doesn't anymore, but helps shape kind of what are all the things that product designers need to know about engineering in order to be dangerous. Anything else you want to add there?
No, it's a lot of fun. I mean, but basically, I think one of the real strengths of the whole program, coming out of the program, is being able to communicate, even if you come from these different disciplines, being able to communicate with someone in that different discipline. So you get enough to, like Sarah said, to get enough to be dangerous, but also just to be able to understand what the difficulties are and where people struggle and going through all that from the different areas.
Yes. And so there's also there's a foundation class for each of the 3 disciplines. The engineering foundation and the design foundation happen over the summer. And the business one happens ideally your first semester of your first year in the program. And I need to get an updated picture from the design class because this is from a couple of years ago and none of the students who are here took this particular class, but it's a similar idea. Is if you don't have a background in design, you learn about design considerations, you learn about digital design, you learn about how you're visualizing your ideas, communicate your ideas, and you're learning to make things. The project used to be a cup and a saucer, which really got a conversation about how multiple objects are related to each other. But you can see from this picture, like these are all cups and saucers, but they're very wide interpretations of what is a cup and what is a saucer. And in your year, what was kind of the main project first years from your design foundation class? Was it around like something that holds an object that's valuable to you?
Yeah, there was that where you had to make something that holds something valuable, but there was also their handheld project where you design a simple handheld device, one part basically. Yeah, I think that was a good introduction.
Yeah, excellent. So again, it's all about kind of getting you up to speed so that you can move forward through the curriculum. The core, once you're kind of in the main program, the core studio curriculum is basically a 4-semester course sequence. that will tell you a little bit about. The program is a 2-year program. It can't really be done in less than 2 years because of this studio sequence. So the first semester is called Design Process. Every student in the program, no matter what their level of experience making a physical product, designs a physical product, and then does some prototyping and testing to improve that product. The second semester, which we've just started, is called Problem Framing. And that's really about taking a step back and asking, why would you design that thing in the first place? So every student in that class will design a digital product, learn a lot about design research and strategy. And then the second project in that class is a client project, which could result in something physical or digital or a service design project. And that's more about design research, design strategy, and again, some ideation and prototyping and iterating. And then in the second year, students work for a year on a final project. So that is a team project. Students come together, form teams, come up with a topic that they're interested in, and then work across 2 semesters to really understand what are the stakeholder needs in that domain, generate a range of ideas, prototype, iterate, test, and refine those ideas. And we'll share some outputs with those next. But Mike, do you want to talk about the studio projects the first semester?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So this first project was, Sean, this is the beginning of the pandemic when people are all of a sudden working at home and everyone has a mess everywhere and they don't know how to put their work away. And this idea is simply that surface you see right there at his elbow, you pick up, you slide down, you can leave your coffee cup, you can leave everything there as long as you shut the top of your computer, and your entire workstation goes away. You're not lugging things back and forth, so you can sort of hide it away, as the name implies. Also to note is it was a finalist in the Best Emerging Design, and the only reason it didn't win is because another IPD project, which we're not showing tonight, actually took first prize. So it's nice when one of our own beats one of our own in this regard. This is another 551 project. So again, they start with a little bit of research, and then it really goes through thinking through how to make it, how to develop it further. And here you can see a project which about algae, which is a nutritious thing to bring into your home, and you can grow it and it's sustainable, but people aren't doing it. So this individual, who has a great background in branding and advertising and just styling ideas, went through both the technological side of growing algae at home, as well as how you would actually get it into a home in an aesthetically pleasing and integrated manner. This is a 552 project. This is where the students work with clients. And this project, actually, we teamed up with people from thanks to people at the law school, they connected us with 2 judges at the municipal court. And they were actually, due to COVID, had redone their courtrooms and said, hey, I think we can probably do more. There are very few, if any, hard and fast rules about why a courtroom is laid out the way it is. So they welcomed our students in. One of the judges in particular was a huge champion of the project. And we put on mock trials, tried all kinds of new ways of laying out the courtroom, and have since brought this to conferences, and that judge is actually continuing to talk about this and getting it in front of additional lawyers in her circle. Another group we often work with for this 552 project is the Hospital University of Pennsylvania, and we will source projects from there. And this one had to do with enteral feeding, which is tube feeding. When you can't eat through your mouth, you have a tube placed into your stomach. And a lot of times people who are being tube fed or are tube fed have issues with medication management, because you're crushing pills, oftentimes many pills, whether it's a caregiver or themselves. So this group looked at ways of efficiently administering medication, both in the hospital and at home, in order to make it safer and more effective.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And so those are just some examples of some of the client projects that we do, and kind of gives you a sense of the range and how it really is about like understanding a situation and then coming up with design interventions and design opportunities based on what we see. As I said, the final project, students have the opportunity to define their own topics, and they form teams and work on that. So these are some examples of projects that come out of that. Weatherless was a project where students were looking at how they could help people better prep in the event of a disaster. The project is a few years old, and the year that the team started working on it, there was like 4 massive destructive hurricanes within the course of like a month. And so this is a combination of a physical product that would be present in your space that you'd learn to trust with the weather results, and a digital project that walks you through like how you could prepare for a disaster. Hint is the project that started with a team looking at how can we help young girls make getting their period less awkward and an uncomfortable experience. And they ended up designing, again, a combination of a physical and a digital product where the physical thing, a lot of people use period tracking apps to know when they're getting their period next, but that requires you to input data. And this is a pouch that you could keep your tampons and pads in, and it would passively learn your behavior. So it would know when you were using it, which meant you had your period, and then it would remind you next time, oh, bring my package. It would give you a hint, bring my pouch with me because I'm gonna get my period. And it also had, I think, information for kids. B Blocks right below it is a project that was completed last year that was students were looking at working in classrooms where children had severe autism. And some of the things that needed to be taught were things like button pushing, how much pressure to put, and controls. And the way that it was being taught was very hands-on. And so the students designed a system of buttons paired with an app where students could do some of their own learning without necessarily having to have a teacher one-to-one, but also the app would kind of learn their skills and advanced skills in a good way, and also give teachers feedback to help them understand, how the kids are doing and what kinds of things they needed to work on. I think those are the ones I'll talk about for now. But again, these are topics whereas in the earlier projects, we kind of frame a project or we'll work with a client to get a project. These are all things where the students are like, this is what I want to work on. And then they continue to, they push the project on their own. So it ends up being really interesting for us, the faculty, because we never know what we're going to be working on from semester to semester. I also wanted to give you a flavor for some of the core classes and some of the electives. So this is a newer elective called How to Make Things. And this is really focused on small batch manufacturing and sustainable manufacturing. And so the pictures you see here are a product that was designed for a product sale. So this class culminates in a final project where students make 24 of something. And they sell them in a fair. And so they learn about, manufacturing multiples, they learn about pricing, they learn about branding, they learn about packaging. And they've had also some really cool partnerships with some local stores where students are able to sell their wares in stores as well. And students actually get to keep the money they make from the products that they sell in this class, which is kind of fun. I don't think it's making anyone like millions, but it's something. Another elective that is core for the MSE degree and an elective for the MIPD degree is design of mechatronics, which Mark teaches. So Mark, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, so this is a course where students learn about how to make electromechanical systems towards a product. So I know a lot of people are learning about Arduino and using Arduino systems. This is actually, I don't think you'd ever sell a product that was based on Arduino. So this is essentially going one step further than that, understanding how the Arduino is made, and then using Arduinos. And then in this picture, that's actually we have a competition where the teams make little robots that drive around in this field and compete against each other. And one year we had a team of IPD students, and they got to name their robot. So they named their robot Sarah Rottenberg. And that year, I think they won also. So
it was all the name for sure. But yeah, that's a really great class that students really love. It's allegedly a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. And we do have students who are not in the MSc who take that class and really get a lot out of it. Mike, do you want to talk about your furniture design class?
Yeah, sure. So briefly, as the name implies, the whole point of this class is not to just make furniture that looks cool, but really think about furniture from more of the industry standpoint and as a development of it through a strategic process. But the reason these images are on the screen is because we don't want to, that is not to make boring furniture, right? We're still asking students what's next. what is provocative for return to office? What are the things people are looking for in education and in healthcare? So the name sounds serious, and we do take a sort of a very sincere approach to developing this furniture, but we are still designers at heart. And that is definitely part of this course and its development.
So those are classes, you know, some of the classes that we take. I think one of the strengths of the program is that because we draw on electives from across the university, the electives that students take are constantly changing. You know, some of that is sad because, you know, Mike could decide to change his class and you're like, oh, but I wanted to take the furniture design and strategic process class. But some of that is really exciting because new electives are constantly being offered in engineering and business and in design that kind of really push the boundaries about how people think of product design. So for example, some of the new electives actually in engineering and design are focused on designing with VR or, you know, machine learning classes. There's some data analytics classes that students can take, but the studio classes really give you kind of that core foundation. And then you're able to kind of tailor what electives you take to create the pathway that you want, the classes that you're most interested in and that you think will serve you as you embark on whatever is going to be next after the program. One other thing I want to mention is in this new building, you saw a picture of the room with the CNC. We also have the studios at Venture Labs, which is a set of maker spaces. There's 2D spaces, 3D spaces, and the CNC, and there's a mechatronics lab. And our students have access to all of those and can use them, but they also can get jobs in those spaces, which I think is really awesome. I think Chris and Varnan are in the mechatronics lab now. It's a great opportunity to make a little bit of money while you're in the program. And you don't even need to know how to use all of the facilities in order to get a job there. You can kind of learn on the job, and then you have access to all of these great machines and tools for making. So the last couple of things that I want to talk about before we pause for Q&A is what's next. So this is not the best slide, but it's better than the last slide that I had that talked about this. Because IPD students come from different backgrounds and take different sets of classes, it's hard to say like, what's the job everyone gets after IPD? But there are sort of patterns on the kinds of jobs that people get. And the arrows that you can't see very well kind of point to jobs at different parts of this circle. So at the real center, a lot of students get jobs like product manager, user experience designer, product designer, UX research design strategist, innovation lead, or co-founder starting a company. More focused on design and business might be jobs like experienced strategist or creative director or project manager. More focused on design and engineering might be something like user interface designer, robotics engineer, design technologist, vehicle development engineer. And I don't make these up. These are like actual job titles of IPD alum. And then more on the engineering business side might be a software developer, a program manager, or a mechanical designer, or new product development engineer. And the other thing that I think makes career pathways a little tricky is that a product manager role at one company might be very different than a product manager role at another company. So in some companies, it's more design forward. In some companies, it's more business forward. In some companies, it's more engineering forward. But students take a lot of different paths and sort of figure out how to navigate those paths. We also have a really strong alumni network. So there's people doing all of these jobs at companies large and small. We have, companies working at, Amazon, Google, Apple, Samsung, and we have students working at IDEO, Smart Design, the Frog. We have students working at small startups. And so there's a lot of opportunity to kind of like, oh, I think I want to take this path for this company. Let me see if I can find an IPD alum who I can at least talk to about the job. We also, between the first and second year, most of our students do internships And so we hear a lot about some of these internships from our alumni who like to hire other IPD students, which is awesome. But we can talk more about this, but this is to say there's a lot of different pathways based on your experience and your interest once you graduate. And almost everybody graduates. One of the things that I love about my job is I get to see students who are in your position, who are just thinking about, do I want to go to grad school? Do I not want to go to grad school? Which school should I go into? See them go through the program and come out really transformed. Graduate school is a big commitment. It's a big commitment of time and it's a big commitment of money. But what I've seen is students get a lot out of it. It's definitely a situation where in some ways you get out of it what you put into it. But there's lots of opportunities through classes, through extracurricular activities, through clubs, through projects, through internships to really kind of grow into the career you want or grow into the technologist that you want to be, create the company that you want to create. There's a lot of opportunity for that. So it's not always like fun and smiley and joy, but it does end in that. And it's really wonderful to kind of see the students get to this place and move on to what's next. So two more things, very short. One is to know more about the program, you should definitely follow us on Instagram. Mostly students post to our Instagram account. So there's all kinds of stuff on there. It's been very quiet over the break, but hopefully it'll peak back up. But that's just a good way to get a sense of like, what's it really like in the program? And then lastly, 3 slides, some details. So applications due Feb 1st. This year, also they'll be due Feb 1st next year. Right now, the GRE is optional, and it really is optional, but we do require a personal statement, portfolio, letters of recommendation, transcripts, and all of that fun stuff. Foreign international applicants are required TOEFLs. The chatbot is really good. You can email me, you can email Abigail Whittington. You can email anyone on the IPD team whose email address you can find on our website, which is all of us, with any questions. And then the last thing, this really is the last slide. We always get questions about portfolio. So I thought I'd kick off and answer some of them right away, and then we can answer whatever questions are still left. I'm sure there will be some. People get really stressed out about the portfolio requirement, particularly if they don't have a design background. So I'm here to tell you, we consider your background when we look at your portfolio. So we're really not expecting you to have a designer's portfolio if you're not a designer. So that's one point. The other point is that the team reading your portfolio is looking at a lot of portfolios. So really think about what's the most important information for that team to see. How can you most concisely communicate what your project is, what you did, and why, and make sure that if you're including information, you're including it for a reason. You're not just saying like, I did this, 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 and this. Tell us why that was important, how it moved your project forward, or if it didn't, you don't have to include it. That's okay. Really edit the projects to tell that overall story of who you are. And we really want to know, like, who are you? How do you think? We want you to be visual, but we don't just want to see outcomes. We do want to see process. And consider a mix of personal, professional, and academic projects. So you can tell a story about almost anything. And we would love to see it and use the portfolio really as a way to get to know you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and take a breath. And thank you guys all for introducing yourselves in the chat. Really appreciate it. And yeah, let's open it up to some questions.
Question for Martha in the chat.
Yeah, for the students, what do you think is the biggest challenge of the program?
I would say I can speak from my experiences. I think IPD is an interdisciplinary program, meaning that it allows you to do a lot of stuff. So some people might come into the program with not so sure about what direction they want to go. So meaning that you could be stuck with taking a lot of classes that's interesting, but not necessarily crafted yourself to be applicable to particular roles, right? So if you're a UX designer, then you should take classes specifically to that, and you can explore other stuff, but you shouldn't be all over the place. I think like that might be a challenge because people here are so curious and they want to learn about anything. Because what's unique about IPD is that you as a business person, as a design person, can take almost any classes. Like Roland, for example, like you could speak to that. He comes from a business background and a design background, and he could take mechatronics, which is more in towards robotics. You couldn't do that at any other program.
He's taking a computer science program right now.
Yeah, and I'm doing a virtual reality and computer graphics class, and I'm from a business background. So that's what I'm saying. As long as you're clear about where you want to go, you can fully do it, but you need to have that direction, and that'd be very helpful.
Yeah,
but that's a challenge.
Yeah, I'm from a design background, and like Mark had me make this. So, yeah, you can really steer to any direction. I don't know of any other place where you can kind of like really jump down the deep end and just go in a direction that you're not familiar with, but you can like get up to speed with. So it's kind of like knowing what to do.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add to that. One thing that makes IPD very unique is the integration of these three different fields. Like for me, with someone from a design and engineering background, getting the knowledge on business has been entirely revolutionary. One of our classes, which is required engineering entrepreneurship, that has been extremely useful in giving me a new perspective into seeing how I design things. And right now, another one of our required classes, design for manufacturability, I'm already starting to get a sense of how all three components of design, business, and engineering come together, and how important it is to have a perspective of all three different fields.
Thank you. There's also a question about career-related resources.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to answer it in the chat. I misunderstood. That's me. So there's a lot of different opportunities available with regards, there's a whole career service department at Penn that their job is to help students find jobs and internships. And I shouldn't say this recording, but they're just like anybody else's career services. They need some backup and they need a bit of help to get the information out to everyone. So our career service department has been doing pop-up advising in our studio so that our students don't have to go all the way down across campus to meet with them. They've also been given targeted career seminars. One last year was on negotiations. The other night they just gave interviewing tips last week. So you have career services. We don't have a formal internship with the program, but Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most students who wanted an internship last year were able to secure one, and they secure one either through the network that they help build here. Sarah mentioned that the students go on studio tours. Sometimes they make connections through that as well. Getting off topic and going to everything. So for career services, you have the alumni network, you have the actual career service team, you have the network that you build while you're in the program, which is huge. And also you have access in a limited capacity to some of the faculty network as well. If you were interested in working at a particular company, more than likely one of our faculty members has a contact there. There's career fairs, there's career counseling. Penn's a pretty big place, and as the students already mentioned, it's more about deciding which resource you're going to take advantage of. So you will have to make some choices, but there's definitely a lot of there is support for career services and career counseling.
And I was just going to add one thing, which is the lecture series that Sarah hosts through 699 is often bringing in professionals. And besides learning from them, I mean, that's your chance to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, let's have a coffee. And then for my part, in all of my classes, I'm always bringing in guest speakers and encourage students to follow up with them. So there's also those sort of informal moments where just being here and being in the right classes that interest you, you'll get to meet those people. And then it's sort of up to everyone to sort of follow up and make those connections. But those things sort of proliferate all the other more formal events that Mary Eileen just mentioned.
There's a question about creative computing languages. So I think in architecture, there are some, maybe Mike might know better. I know of courses, you know, I know there are courses where they use processing. I've had a lot of students want to use processing in mechatronics. I'm not so sure about P5, the JavaScript library, though we do a little bit of JavaScript in mechatronics, not a lot, and there are courses with that as well.
Yeah, architecture definitely has creative coding courses. I just can't speak to them.
There's some in the undergraduate design major too that IPD students can also take. Okay, students, this one's for you. How do you feel business is important for design or engineering? I think Cam started to talk to that, but.
Yeah, I can kind of elaborate on that. It's basically taking into consideration materials, a new appreciation for the entirety of the users. For example, from a design background, I am mainly analyzing something based on the end user. So for example, if I'm, let's say a grocery cart, the DFM kids know what I'm talking about. So with this grocery cart, you usually have a person who is using the grocery cart. You're buying items from a grocery store and putting stuff in it. But also what you don't consider is that the users are not just these people who are buying and putting stuff into the grocery cart. It's also folks who are cleaning them up from the parking lots, people who are delivering them, repairing them. The whole system of who orders these grocery carts, where they come from, that whole manufacturing process is integrated into the business. And as a designer, as an engineer, you have to think about, oh, hey, these are some of the users that I also need to interview, to talk to get their perspective of. Because sometimes you forget that one product is encompassing of a lot more than, again, you would think.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Cameron was saying, the thing is, when you design a product or when you engineer a product, the journey doesn't stop there. You're trying to solve problems for people, and that's going to come at a cost. So determining whether that product is viable is largely going to be based on the business aspect of the product you're developing. People have to buy it because essentially it's not really going to be free. Even if it's something you're donating, somebody has to cover the cost. So just understanding the cost implication of what it takes to build this thing and what does it take to ship that, and throughout the entire product life cycle, there are costs that would be associated with everything. So just business is integral to both sides, not just design, not just engineering. It truly connects the both areas.
I think
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin, you can go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Even if you really, because your background is in design, like even if you want to be like just solely just working on design stuff, you want to understand the language of business, because you're going to end up working in a career where business people are going to be involved. So having that skill of communicating with business people is also important.
Yeah, and we live in a capitalistic society, so everything runs on money. I mean, I'm going to be real here. If you don't have people that buy your product, if you don't understand your market segment, who you're selling it to, your company, your product is going to fail. And that's one of the important things that IPD has taught us, where we need to consider our market segments, all of our users, and how our product can go throughout the entire cycle of development, production, marketing, etc.?
I come from a design background, and before I came here, all I knew about innovation was design and engineering. But I took the same classes Cameron just talked about, engineering entrepreneurship, and it blew my mind. Like, I can't think about anything the same way again. Like, yeah.
That's awesome. And that's an example of, I'm going to jump ahead. That's an example of a foundation class that if you don't have a business foundation, we require engineering entrepreneurship, but a lot of students who aren't required to take it because it's a really good class. We'll evaluate your portfolios and your application and tell you which foundations are required. And if you have questions about that, you can let us know. We've also had students who say, I know this isn't required, but I'd like to get up to speed, and you can definitely register for those classes as well. I want to call out the question about studio life culture. So there's two questions that maybe I'll ask you guys to just speak to however you want. One is like, what's studio life culture like, and what clubs and activities are available?
I think I could start. I think in general, when I also applied to IPD, that was a big question that I had for the current students and also alumni. And what they have said kind of holds true. Being at IPD is being with a very intimate family. You're kind of living almost on top of each other, and everybody's extremely helpful and collaborative. Like, much of what you learn at IPD is through your peers, and it's through them helping you with classes that you're taking, but they're not necessarily taking, or you just being very curious about what they know and their experiences from previously. Like, people have built design agencies here. They started companies. They had won design awards. There's so much to learn. So it's very intimate and very friendly and very collaborative. And it's because of that also extremely social. Because people get along so well. In terms of clubs activities, you can literally join any club and activity at Penn. So I'm also part of societies that specifically target towards undergraduate students, but just to get to know more of Penn, that's kind of what I did it. So you're like any other student at Penn, have access to everything you could imagine.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, IPD is, as Vardhan said, a very, very tight-knit community. I would honestly argue that we are one of the tightest communities on campus. I have a lot of friends doing other programs at other schools, and I don't think IPD or anything else can compare to IPD and our closeness. We're always hanging out together in the studio. I mean, Chris literally lives in the studio. If it wasn't for the 2 a.m. Closing of the studio, I think he would be there all the time. I mean, Roland and Kevin are actually there right now in the studio. And it's just a wonderful place where we basically make lifelong friendships and learn from each other. I mean, I can't tell you how much I've learned about marketing from Roland and Kevin, how much industrial design I've learned from Yishan, from Chris, and then Vardhan. Man, this genius, absolute genius.
I think just to chime in there as well, like, what's beautiful about IPD is that we have Tangent Hall as our building. And we have a studio on the 4th floor, meaning that if you ever want to have something social, if you ever need help with anything, you can just come into our building, which is open to 2 a.m. almost every day. You will find someone sitting there and working. I think that's beautiful about IPD. Like, most other programs, it doesn't really have that very specific environment that I could step into at any time, and you would have that social aspect or help immediately. But IPD has that. This is kind of like our home, which really does a lot for the culture and community at our program.
Yeah, maybe I can add to it a little bit. Like, outside of IPD, we also have a lot of events like for us to connect with like alumni. So such as like student government, GSEG, often organize alumni mixer every month. So you can go there to drink for free and meet a lot of alumni who from School of Engineering. There's another student government, GEPSA. They also organize like student mixer between different schools. So you are also be able to meet different students, not just from design, engineering, and business. You can also meet medical school student. You can also meet students from like the law school. And yeah, like last semester, me and my friend, we just went to a mixer to drink with like students from the law school, and meet a lot of amazing, talented people. So yeah, your life will be very busy here.
Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Just wanted to talk about clubs a little bit. So you have access to all these different clubs, including the Wharton clubs. So I'm currently the VP for experiential learning for Wharton Innovation and Design, and you are able to become like officers for all these different clubs from many different schools. And yeah, it is exciting opportunities for everyone.
And as part of that, there's a question about entrepreneurship. So I want to highlight the building that we're in is run by Venture Lab, which is Wharton's entrepreneurship arm. And all IPD students can join and be a part of that. So that gives you access to all kinds of events with entrepreneurs. It gives you access to, you can apply for funding for your own idea. You can be part of an accelerator. There's a lot of different ways. In classes, there's a lot of opportunities to come up with ideas. And then if you have an idea, there's Venture Lab funding, there's I-Core funding. There's a lot of different places within Penn where you can get both funding for your idea and also feedback on your idea and support, and tap the alumni network for help pushing your idea forward. So in addition to like curricular things like classes on entrepreneurship, there's a lot of extracurricular opportunities to kind of push your idea forward. And you can even apply to get funding to just work on your company for the summer if you don't want to have an internship working for someone else.
Just to expand a little bit on that, also the Tangen building, and just to make it a little bit clearer, I know it may have sounded like IPD owns the whole building, but IPD is actually only on one floor, and the rest of the buildings, they're actually partially to support entrepreneurial efforts. It turned out that initially there are so many programs that are to help entrepreneurs. There's Penvention, the Wharton Business Plan competition, the Y Prize competition. There's so many different ones that they made this building to help start to try to unify them. Even now, there's a ton of different resources for that.
Maybe I can add to it from a student perspective. Like a class I took last semester is engineering entrepreneurship, and this class teach us the in and out of how to be an entrepreneur. We also have the opportunity to meet a lot of like people who come from similar background, who come from like who was student at Penn, and they end up being like the founder of Venmo. We get to meet the founder of Venmo. We get to meet people like who start their VC firm. We meet like angel investor, and like then there's other classes like I think there's like engineering entrepreneurship lab where you can actually bring your own idea, and in the class you can make it into a real venture. So yeah, there's a lot of support behind that.
Thank you, Ishan. I know we're almost out of time. Is there a last question? Or from the IPD student side, anything else you feel like you must share about the program, about applying to the program? No last questions, no more, no last share, that's okay.
I actually want to ask a question about the DPI requirement. Like on the application page, it says less than 72 DPI per page, but like on the IPD's website, it says like 10 MB in total for the portfolio. So I want to ask, because when exporting 72 DPIs, it's like really blurry to read. And I wonder like if it's okay to increase it a little bit.
Okay, I got this one. So the application system will only accept a certain file size, or it won't upload. You can increase your DPI as long as it will accept the upload. I mean, it will come a point where it will shut down and it just won't take it. But the main thing you want to keep in mind is the faculty that wrote the guidelines for the portfolios will be the ones reviewing your application. So it's okay to plus or minus one image, or maybe take a little bit of freedom, but you just don't want to just like totally disregard the guidelines.
Thank you.
Yes, students can submit a link to their online portfolio. You just make a PDF document with your name, applicant information, and a link to your online portfolio. But your online portfolio should still follow the guidelines as best they can.
Yeah, and again, like you can have more information on your portfolio, but keep in mind that people who are looking at, and this is true whether you're applying for jobs or programs, people who are looking at your portfolio don't have like half an hour to go deep into detail in your portfolio, sadly, right? So you want to make sure that you're guiding us to the things that you think are most important and that tell the best story about you and who you are. And maybe you want to suck us in so that we do spend more time than we had allotted because we're so intrigued by your projects, but assume that people are going to be kind of looking, in detail, but looking rather quickly. And so guide us on like what the most important things are to look at, because it's too hard to go really deep with a lot of applications. Yes, and for both programs, you can submit a website link, but you need to submit that in a PDF. I put my email in the chat. It's srot@design.upenn.edu. Feel free to reach out to me. And feel free to reach out to anyone in the program if you have any other questions. And yeah, so the deadline, we didn't really get to hear from you guys, but the deadline for this year is February 1st. Some of you might be thinking more long-term. If you have questions, reach out to us and we are happy to answer them. And I just want to thank the students for showing up today. You didn't have to, and I really appreciate that you did. There are women in the program. It just so happens that we got a lovely group of gentlemen, but thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And thank you, prospective students. And yeah, hopefully we will see you again sometime soon.